Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I will demonstrate how to rig and fish a split shot rig in low, clear, flowing rivers or streams. So without much further ado, let's get to it. The split shot rig is composed of split shot, a swivel of your choice, I prefer crane swivel or no roll swivel, to a very short or long leader depending on the water clarity. I prefer to use this light wire mosquito style hook, and for this rig it is important to have various sizes of split shots because the flow will be very dependent on the size of split shot needed to pin next to the swivel. As for the bait I am fishing today, I am fishing live bait. However, this rig can be used to fish even artificial. So how I normally rig my worms, or today in case I am using jumbo red worms. The reason I'm using jumbo red worms is because there are a lot of species in the river currently right now I'm trying to target. So I will rig the worm from the back to the front of the collar to give it its most lively action. Now as for the tackle I like to fish this rig on, I like to fish this on an ultra light spinning rod setup. I prefer to use a monofilament main line with a fluorocarbon leader to let the bait sink a little. The primary use of this rig is to target low, clear, flowing water. I ended up getting bit, and as demonstrated, this rig excels especially when the water is low and clear with very little flow. Today on my local river, the water is extremely low and very clear. There are quite a handful of steelhead smolts in the system along with some downer steelhead, so hopefully today I could show you guys a few species, but if there are no other participating species, I'll take what I can get. I ended up looking into this small little smolt, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. There's quite a few of these guys in the system still. Thanks for playing, buddy. Off you go. Now as for how I fish this rig, I like to make a cast about 180 degrees in front of me, and I will let the slow flow slowly lift the bait along as close to the bottom as I can. Occasionally it will tick the bottom, but I will continue to lift the rod every time it ticks along the bottom. You do not want this bait to drag along the bottom, because if you do so, you will get snagged. I ended up getting bit, and more times than not, when fishing rivers and streams, your bite will come at the end of the swing. Where this rig really excels is low clear water. As I've mentioned already, in low clear water, this rig will enable an angler to present a bait really naturally. Another way I like to fish this rig also is by putting a fly on the other end, particularly a nymph or even a bead imitation if there were spawning salmonid in the water. I have caught many fish successfully with this rig, especially in low clear water. Again, today I'm fishing barbless hook, so I'm able to just pop the hook right out. I'll show this little steelhead smolt to you guys real quick before letting him go. He is very pretty nonetheless. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit. Oh, and you're going the wrong way. Off you go, dude. However, the downside of this rig is its light line and light tackle. When there are species around such as downer steelhead, bigger pike minnows and hardhead, or even salmon, this rig will struggle to land fishes of that caliber successfully. Fishing this rig on a bigger setup is not very conducive. I ended up getting bit, and as I have also mentioned, when fishing this rig on a bigger setup such as a medium action or heavy action rod, or heavier line, the bait will not float naturally because of the thickness of the line and the heavier gear. It will be very difficult to detect a bite in low flow. Therefore, this rig really excels in low clear water in my opinion. Again, the tackle I would recommend to fish this rig would be an ultra light spinning rod setup or a light action rod setup. I prefer to fish this rig anywhere from a 5-foot rod to an 8-foot rod, sometimes even a 9-foot rod. My personal preference is to fish this on an 8-foot ultralight spinning rod with a 2000 size spinning reel. I have my spinning reel loaded with monofilament because about 90% of the time the bite detection is going to happen via the rod tip. This is another little steelhead smolt, and I'll show them to you guys real quick. I can't seem to catch a hardhead or a pike minnow today, but there are plenty of these guys around. Thanks for playing, buddy. Off you go. Now as for the kind of water an angler should look for when fishing this rig is, I want to look for a slow walking pace kind of water. The piece of water I am fishing in front of me now, I am fishing on the slower side of this channel. On the slower side, there is an eddy in front of me. I will target the front side of the eddy, which is the closest side to me first, before casting out further. I want to fan this rig, because this is how I will approach the slow side. More times than not, these fishes will hang out on the eddy side, which will be the slow side in this channel. Depending on the species, different time of year will have different species available in this type of water. More times than not, steelhead or salmon will hold on the faster side, which will be on the opposite side of this piece of water. But because I'm fishing in the spring, I'll have a mixed amount of species holding. I ended up getting bit, and this was a nice little half-pounder steelhead. There are quite a handful of these guys around in the system as well. However, today I really wanted to show that this rig can indeed catch a plethora of species. I've caught many species in river systems on the west coast with this rig. Everything including pike minnows, hardhead, suckers, and even blackfish in Clear Lake, especially when they're going up the tributaries to spawn with this rig. Another fish I've also caught quite successfully with this rig when the water is low is salmon if the season were to be open. My preference to fish on the business end will always be bait. However, if bait is not allowed and I'm on one of those bait restricted rivers, I will actually fish artificials on the other end of this rig. I will actually fish with a nymph on the end of this rig in those bait restricted rivers. Now this is a very nice half-pound steelhead, and I'll show them to you guys real quick. Again, I like to fish barbless hook nowadays, especially when I'm fishing bait and I'm not retaining a fish. This section is a barbless only section, so I am always fishing with barbless anyways. While trying to get this fish to pose for the camera, he didn't want to be a YouTube star and ended up swimming away. As the evening approached, there were more and more fishes starting to run up this little run. However, what I've noticed is that these fishes were extremely finicky. I've watched a handful of them try to make a run up this riffle and ended up just ignoring the bait. There is a giant pike minnow at the end of this swing, but I don't think he is going to cooperate. However, a lot of these steelheads were cooperating quite nicely this evening. I don't know why, but sometimes, despite being more aggressive than steelhead, sometimes these pike minnow can actually turn off. So I ended up hooking a steelhead that was sitting behind the pike minnow instead. I don't mind hooking into steelhead, but I did want to show a few of the rough fish species available in our local waters. This is a very nice little half-pound steelhead nonetheless, and I am happy I ended up hooking him. More times than not, the rough fish species, such as the pike minnow and the hardhead, are far more cooperative this time of year than the steelheads. So hopefully today's episode gives you guys my take on how to fish this rig. Again, I've shown this rig several times on this channel. It is probably one of my favorite rigs, especially in the last decade when many of the flows around my area and our rivers and streams are unpredictably low and warm. It has been my go-getter, especially in tough years where we have little to non-existent flows in our river systems. This is a very gorgeous native fish. I'll show him to you guys real quick before prepping him for release. Thanks for playing, buddy. Oh, you're going the wrong way. And I'll let him rest up a bit before letting him swim off strong. Off you go, dude. The sun is setting fast, and I really want to try and catch this giant pike minnow that's at the end of this swing. However, there are quite a handful of steelhead that have now moved into this run. I'm going to try and target the steelhead, but if the pike minnow does pick up the bait, it will be a bonus. I ended up watching the bait come down, and the steelhead ended up picking up the bait instead. More times than not, I will watch the rod tip. I ended up getting bit, and as demonstrated, I can actually see the bite occur before I even set the hook. The rod ended up loading up, and I knew I got the steelhead instead. This is actually a very nice steelhead, probably one of the downer fishes. But ultimately, I ended up losing this fish. Yes, I am just like any other angler. I have my bad days, and I have lost plenty of fishes too. The sun is setting fast, so I'm going to try and wrap up this session. Hopefully today's episode demonstrated and explained how I would use this rig to target the conditions presented to me in low, clear water. If we were to have high flows, I wouldn't use this rig and I will actually use traditional bottom bouncing or float fishing. However, in the last decade, as I have mentioned, this rig has saved me quite a bit of times. I ended up getting bit again, and this was no pipe minnow, but another half-pound steelhead. I am very pleased to hook him as well, and I will take what I can get for the day. So the next time if you are out on the water and are faced with low clear water in your river or streams, try this rig. It has saved me quite a handful of time, and it has saved quite a handful of Midwest and East Coast anglers, especially those guys fishing those tiny little rundown creeks that are tributaries to the Great Lakes. It is not as popular out here on the West Coast because most West Coasters, when they think of fishing rivers with salmon and steelhead, they're either thinking of float fishing or bottom bouncing. So the next time you're out on the water and are faced with tough conditions, especially low clear water, try this rig. This is a very nice bright fish, and I'll show them to you guys real quick before heading off for the day. Again, I like to fish with barbless hooks when fishing with bait, and the hook just pops right out. This is a very nice bright fish, a native fish. These native fishes are so bright and pretty this time of year. Thanks for playing, buddy. I'll let you rest up a bit, and off you go. Overall, it was just a great evening on my local river. Hopefully today's episode demonstrate and taught a handful of you guys that have been asking about this rig on where and how to apply it. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, tight lines y'all.